Hello and welcome to another TLDR US video. So we're in December, which means that 4 weeks have passed since election day, but it seems that the debate surrounding the election is as furious as ever. Trump and his team are continuing to insist that voter fraud impacted the election, specifically blaming the voter machines which count the votes, with Dominion voting systems taking a lot of the heat. So in this video, we take a look at what's happened, the security of the election, and whether there really is something weird going on with the voter machines. Before we start, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to this channel. Also, we have a few other channels, including TLDR Daily, where we post a daily summary of the latest news, often including news from the US and the rest of the world. Find links to all of our channels in the description. Now, it's worth explaining for international viewers the current system of voting in the US and how electronic voting machines play a role in the system. Since elections are run by states and not the federal government, obviously there's quite a bit of variation. But in general, you can break electronic voting down into two categories. The first and most common is voting using an optical scan system, wherein you fill out bubbles on a paper and the paper is subsequently scanned by a machine, similar to the scantrons often used in schools and for standardized tests. The other category is voting with a direct recording machine. Here, your ballot is entirely digital, filled out on a machine, leaving no paper trail. So now we know how the system currently works, it's worth discussing some of the known issues with the system, because it will be completely disingenuous to pretend that it works perfectly. The main issue often cited by election officials, somewhat ironically, is trust. Digital voting just feels less trustworthy, and becomes even more problematic when you're using a direct recording system, because now you don't have a paper trail to fall back on. You're just crossing your fingers and hoping that the programmers didn't screw something up. It's worth saying here that most issues aren't scary hackers, but sleep-deprived election workers who accidentally press the wrong button. But as innocent as such mistakes may be, they still create an issue when there's no paper trail. These problems have been raised before, but they've never gained significant traction because they've not had an advocate like President Trump before, with him not complaining about the issue back in the 2016 election. This time though, the president thinks there's something wrong, with Trump and his supporters making the case that he lost the election because of fraudulent voting machines. So, is this what happened? Well, the core claim made by Trump and others is that Dominion's voting machines were rigged against the president, with them allegedly deleting millions of Trump votes and changing thousands of others from Trump to Biden, citing right-wing news source OAN. OAN say that they got this information from an unaudited analysis of data conducted by Edison Research. The problem is that their president said, Edison Research has produced no such report and we have no evidence of any voter fraud. So, with Edison denying the OAN claim, they were asked to provide further evidence, which they failed to provide. But I can hear people already typing, what about the issues in Antrim County? And it's a reasonable point. In the Michigan County, the results were initially tabulated incorrectly, giving Biden a 3,000 vote win in the ordinarily red area. Officials spotted the issue, looked into it, and found that in reality Trump had won Antrim by 2,500 votes. So Biden had, at least temporarily, been given a win in a county which used Dominion voting machines. Suspicious, right? And evidence of machines flipping votes for Biden. Well, no, because as Michigan's Secretary of State pointed out, the error had nothing to do with the machines and instead was a human error, saying the equipment and software did not malfunction and all ballots were properly tabulated. However, the clerk accidentally did not update the software used to collect voting machine data and report unofficial results. Similar claims were made in Georgia too, with figures like Fox News' Sean Hannity saying that there have been issues in the state. However, as Georgia's Secretary of State made clear, despite there being some reporting delays, the machines had counted every ballot correctly. Don't trust him? Well, he's actually a Republican, and he said that he voted for Trump. So it looks like any errors associated with the machines have been attributed as human errors which were caught, rather than issues with the machines themselves. In fact, a voting technology expert from the non-partisan OSET Institute, who have monitored more than 1,000 reports of voter issues since election day, found that there had only been a small handful of issues, and that these were the result of human error involving voter technology, not the software itself. But what about the claim that Trump mentioned in that original tweet? The idea that 941,000 Trump votes in Pennsylvania had been deleted by Dominion. A mistake that big can't just be dismissed as human error, right? Well, it can't, and that's because it didn't happen. How do we know? Well, it's mathematically impossible. As Dominion explains, their technology was used in 14 Pennsylvania counties, counting a total of 1.3 million Pennsylvanian votes, a 76% turnout. So, using that information, we can work out the maximum number of ballots that could possibly have been cast was 1.7 million. So throwing away 940,000 would surely be noticed. And considering that 52% of the votes that Dominion did count were for Trump, some 676,000, it would be mathematically impossible for them to throw away 941,000 Trump votes, change 221,000 while still counting 676,000 more. That's just more votes than the size of the total electorate. Also, the idea of changing or deleting votes without anyone noticing is more than a little far-fetched. In fact, the Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity Division even stated publicly that it wouldn't be possible for votes to be manipulated without detection, explaining the rigorous safeguards put in place to prevent this exact thing from happening. But what about the company themselves? Trump and others have claimed that Dominion works with Democrats and is even linked with Hugo Chavez and Venezuelan socialists. This argument is based on the fact that Dominion's parent company, Smartmatic, was founded by Venezuelans, and they did indeed do work with the Venezuelan government. However, there's no evidence to suggest that they rigged any elections in Venezuela, and they even came out against the government, accusing them of electoral fraud in 2017. So there's no evidence at all that Smartmatic has ever rigged any elections, is associated with socialists, or helped Venezuela. In fact, the very opposite. The other issue with this claim? Well, remember I said that Smartmatic was Dominion's parent company, thus linking Dominion to the unfounded Venezuela conspiracy. Well, despite this being claimed by Trump's lawyers Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell on TV, it's simply not true. In fact, the two aren't linked, instead fierce competitors, something both companies have confirmed since the election. So even if there was something a bit dodgy about Smartmatic and Venezuela, which there's no evidence of, it wouldn't matter right now, because Smartmatic and Dominion are completely unaffiliated. Dominion is, again despite Giuliani's claims, an American company, majority owned by a New York private equity firm. So there's no foreign interference and no link to Smartmatic. But what about their history with the Democrats? Haven't Dominion donated money to the Dems and supported them before? Well, yes, but also no. As part of their lobbying work, Dominion have indeed donated to Democratic interests, and they did give money to the Clinton Foundation to donate election technologies to poorer countries. However, they also donated to Mitch McConnell's Senate committee and other Republican causes. Dig into any company like this, and you'll see that as part of their lobbying efforts, they regularly donate to causes on both sides of the aisle. Whether lobbying is good or not is a topic for another day, but there's no evidence to back up the claims that Dominion support Democratic causes over Republicans. One final claim we'll tackle is the idea that Dominion processes ballots outside of the US, and that their Frankfurt offices were raided by the US military, thus potentially jeopardizing the count. Now, as you might be getting used to by this point, there are a number of issues here. Firstly, as Dominion confirms on their website, none of their servers anywhere in the world have been raided by the US military or anyone else, something the US military confirmed to the AP. The real kicker though, Dominion doesn't even have any servers in Germany. It seems that the story is actually mixing up Dominion with another completely unrelated company. Though, ironically, they also haven't been raided and also don't have any offices in Frankfurt. So, if all of these claims about Dominion weren't already looking suspect enough, a joint statement published by the Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency found that there's no evidence that any voting system deleted, lost, or changed votes, or in any way was compromised. Maybe the evidence will change though. Maybe we'll find out something new which changes everything. However, with the evidence we have right now, there's almost nothing to back up the assertions made about Dominion's voting machines, and no reason to suspect the vote counting machines made any impact on the election's result. What do you think about this whole situation though? Do you think that America should reform its voting systems? And if so, do you think the issues with the current system justify the kind of allegations that Trump and his supporters are making? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified when we release further videos in the future. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible. And if you want to see your name at the end of videos, then you too can back us on Patreon. The link to that's in the description.